The lights are flashing. It's time to record again, and this time it's a solo podcast, but it's not a Q&A. It is one of my birthday specials, the third annual time that I've done this. And for those that are new here, it is a reflection on the past 12 months and some of my biggest lessons, takeaways, reflections, and thoughts. Let's kick off with number one: stack more private wins to unlock public victories. In the modern age, particularly with social media, it's never been easier to fixate on how you're perceived publicly and how you're seen. The attention economy online and the amount of people that are sharing to the masses only amplifies this. When somebody else is playing the game, you're encouraged to play the game as well. And this thought is a slightly remixed thought of what I spoke about on one of my previous solos when I was reflecting on birthday lessons, where I said win offline to win online. So for me, some of the biggest public victories that I've been able to share this year, maybe when it's come to my sales career and some of the figures that I've done, maybe some of the metrics behind the podcast, maybe announcing a new sponsor, or perhaps when I've been on holiday and it's looked more lavish or more excitable than previous times. These are all public victories that are enabled by what happens behind the scenes, by what happens in private, in the sales world, for example. It is very unlikely that publicly I'm going to be able to come and talk about big figures and big deals and big metrics if I haven't done loads of really boring stuff behind the scenes where I've showed up day after day, made the calls, sent the emails, done the research on the prospect, delivered a presentation, been rejected many, many times over by prospects, not just at each stage of the process, whether that's been getting a meeting, whether that's been getting to a quote stage, whether that's after sending the quote and maybe them choosing another vendor. There's so much that goes on behind the scenes from a private wins perspective or a private effort perspective that so many people don't see within the public victory. I do think, to caveat this, I always joke that it's not as sexy or as marketable if you caveat it. I do think we're seeing more and more of what high achievers are doing throughout their days and their mornings and their evenings and the routines they build, which helps us get a slight insight into what might lead to the public victory. But even then, it's still not seeing everything that's happening. So I strongly encourage people to consider what are some of the things that you should be doing in private that are going to lead to the public victory that many of us crave or at least expect to be able to announce at some point. I don't think it's the right thing for you to constantly be wanting that public victory and that adulation, but it's only human nature that we want recognition for our efforts. So let's strip back and think about what those efforts might be. What are those private wins that you can do if it's from a health and a fitness perspective, which is always the easiest one to strip back to? A private win might be the time that you chose to take the car rather than having a few pints because you knew that calorically you couldn't get away with it and you would make bad food choices the next day. The private win might be that you went for the run that morning when it was pouring with rain and the easiest thing to do would have been to snooze the alarm and stay in bed. It might be the gym session you did that you just were not feeling it after a long Thursday in the office where everything went wrong. And the easiest thing would have been to do to drive home and put Netflix on and get a takeaway. But you instead showed up for yourself and did the right thing and had a private win that nobody was necessarily going to clap you on the back for. But by doing those things over and over and over again, they compound and we give us the opportunity to get those public victories in the future. Number two, we're all more connected than ever, but starving for connection. I appreciate I've used two of the same word, but I think it's really important to consider that. In this world, we are more connected to everyone than ever before through our phones. However, more people are also more lonely than they've ever been as well. That is a frightening prospect. It's a total juxtaposition. It's the wrong way round. If we were being true to ourselves and knew the power of social media that we could use, and I'm going to come on to this point later, we could utilize these platforms to become more connected again. But the depth and the actual meaning of the connection that we're getting is lower than before. I know, for example, that it was again, I'm recording this just after my birthday. The number of really encouraging, supportive, kind messages I received was amazing. And that underlines to me, those are the people that are connected to me on a deeper level because they're wishing me a happy birthday, they're getting in touch, they're giving me their well wishes, they're taking the time of the day to do it. But I'm probably connected to like thousands more people beyond that who either weren't aware it's my birthday or didn't have the time to message or wherever else as well. And that means something because we have all these what I would call loose ties that are there for us, and we know they're there, but they aren't truly there on a deeper level. Our caveman brains, I still don't think, are used to it. I still don't think they're used to the fact that we have access to all this different opportunities for conversations and for getting in touch with people, but we actually don't have it on a deep level. There's the whole thing that many people in the US don't actually have like one single contact they would phone in the event of an emergency. That's frightening when you consider that. But I bet they've probably got 300 friends on their Facebook page or 1,000 followers on Instagram. So there's a lot to consider when it comes to how much connection we have through our phones, but how much of it is actually on a deeper level where you have something meaningful with that person. And I'm definitely going to come on to the point in terms of using social media properly later in this episode, and I've done it on previous solos. I really think that you need to try and progress some of your online connections to in-person real life stuff. Test if that person that you like each other's photos and reply to each other's stories and chat, would you get on in person? Let's try and connect deeper than that, and let's try and build something that's actually meaningful rather than just gathering followers or likes or people within your phone book. Actually, let's have people within our lives that we know will show up for us when push comes to shove, and we'll really, really get value from that. Number 3, the soul becomes dyed with the colours of its thoughts. And that's a quote from Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, one of the kind of forerunners when it came to Stoicism, which is a fantastic philosophy and something that I've taken a lot from over the years. I really started to believe in the last few years that what you focus on expands. So your thoughts and all the things that you're consuming on a regular basis, they become things. And that's not to say if you're somebody that's against the idea of manifestation or you think it's woo-woo, I understand and I appreciate your perspective. What I will say, and this is coming from Marcus Aurelius, who's an awful lot wiser than I am, probably wiser than most people listening to this. What is going on inside your body and your mind really does start to permeate and start to go into different areas and start to impact all the areas that you touch and all the things you get involved in within your life. With that in mind, choose carefully. The color of your thoughts is the phrase that he uses. That for me evokes things like the color red, for example, is angry thoughts. So that will start to permeate and dye your soul. If you've got light, spring colored thoughts, that will start to make your soul feel lighter, more airy, more open, perhaps. So having thoughts that are colored in the best possible way will give you the best possible chance of feeling your best. I know that when I turn the switch on to be more grateful, to be more open, to be more celebratory, to be more excitable, these are all qualities that are reflected in my body language. They're reflected in how I show up in person and online. And I think when we consider the impact that our thoughts can have is so powerful down the line. And I would encourage all of us to try and maintain a grip of that and try and know that you have a relative power over that. I'm talking about your thoughts just now, but I know that one of the biggest contributions that the likes of Andrew Huberman has made as an online creator and his kind of British equivalent, who I interviewed in 2022, TJ Power, who's a British neuroscientist, is that the mind follows the body. So if I feel like the color of my thoughts are not as they want to be, or not as I would like, then what I can do is I can consider, what can I do with my body to improve the color of my thoughts? Can I go for a walk with a great podcast? Can I go out in nature? Can I go for a run? Can I do a gym session? Can I phone a friend? The things that I take action on can dictate the color of my thoughts and therefore dictate how my soul shows up as well. And I know that sounds very deep and we're just getting started in this episode, but it's something that I've been thinking a lot about. And I think that I really want, if you are in a place right now where the color of your thoughts and how you're thinking about yourself and those around you is in a negative place, give yourself a chance to change the record, switch it up. And I'm sure that many things will fall into place in a more positive way if you can do that. Number 4, do not learn what you don't know until you act upon what you do. We are in the age of mass consumption. How many times have you seen on LinkedIn some helmet being like, I read 52 books last year? Okay, cool. Big guy. Tell me, what did you learn and action from those books? Because it is so easy to just consume. And I say this as a podcaster. I would love you to consume every episode that I release every single Sunday and every single Wednesday when I manage to get one out there, as I've done today. But what I would like more is that if you listen to 50% less and you actioned or took something meaningful away from the conversation that you listened to. I would rather read one book a year and take 5 lessons from it than read 52 and take no lessons away from them. I really do think that we shouldn't always be on the quest for more information if we haven't quite understood how to make the most of the information that we currently have to hand. I've said before that Atomic Habits is probably one of the most fundamentally important books that I've read in my life. I've read it twice, but so much of how I shape my behavior, how I shape my routine, and how I control my environment and therefore the things that I choose to do on a regular basis has come from that book. I could have easily breezed on and read something else, and I would not be in the same position I'm in because I really rinsed everything there was to learn from that book. So instead of me chasing down the next thing or reading the next book, I really, really took advantage of what was within those pages and what was available to me to action within those pages. So I would encourage everyone listening to think about something you've listened or read recently and reflect on whether you got the most from that. And now, not everything we listen to, not everything we read has to be the most important and the most game changing thing. But if you are somebody that's a voracious listener and reader and consumer of content, try and consider, what have I done off the back of this? What have I been able to change? What have I been able to do? What have I been able to open up my mind to? What have I been able to take action on? That will be very, very valuable to you. Do not become somebody that is just shoveling down information relentlessly and is in the exact same position when it comes to brain body business after a year of CamBro podcasts, because I really hope you're in a more positive position off the back of listening to what I put out there. Number 5, use it or lose it. I've long held this belief when it comes to fitness in our bodies, and I've definitely become starkly aware of that as I've entered my early 30s, but it absolutely applies to the mind and other skills too. For example, I have gone through a really busy period in work where a lot of my time, rather than me prospecting and winning new deals, has been ensuring that the deals that I have signed have been happening during September and October as I sold them. So there's been a lot of project management, there's been a lot of supply chain management, there's been a lot of customer relations. It has been far less about me chasing down something new, getting the meeting, doing the pitch, doing the presentation, getting the price right, having the negotiations, closing the deal. So I know that when I go back to doing more of that come the end of this month and into November, I won't be quite as sharp as I usually am. I won't be quite as articulate on the phone. I won't be quite as resilient as I normally am because I haven't been using it as much. And I won't have lost it, but I will have lost an element of sharpness. Think about if you go away on a wild holiday. It's 2 weeks away. You don't train at all. Now, this is not something I've ever done before, but I realize I'm not normal in that respect. You come back, and the first few times in the gym, your technique on the bench doesn't feel as smooth. Everything feels a little bit slower and more sluggish and a bit more difficult. You have not lost it, but you have lost an element of it. And I really think that there's certain things in my life I need to do really regularly for me to stay locked in on the technique and the application of that technique and the fluency of that technique. It could be brain, it could be body, it could be business. There's so many different strands to this, but making sure that I regularly use it ensures that I don't lose it, or at least I don't lose a lot of it. And I'm going to talk about maintenance towards the end of this podcast. But I really, really think that if you want to become an expert in something and give yourself the best possible chance of operating in that for a really long time at a good level, then you need to continually be using what is available to you and the skills that you've crafted in the areas that you care about. Otherwise, there will be an element of it fading away. I said at the start of that point that fitness was the first time that came to me. And I think if you look at guys that have like stopped training or taken a break or like an extended time away from it, they really notice it coming back. Like you see the footballers that come out of retirement and play in like a big charity game, and they've got an element of the skill, but they're obviously nowhere near the polished level. It's because they haven't been using it to the same extent they used to. They're not as sharp. Of course they're not. They're not as polished because they haven't been putting in the same amount of effort. So consider that, one, in terms of how hard you are on yourself when you haven't been doing something and you don't deliver at the level you used to. Or two, when you have expectations and you aren't meeting them because you haven't done enough of the work to use it and an element of it has faded away. Number 6, If all the year were playing holidays, to play would be as tedious as work. And that's from William Shakespeare. I've quoted Shakespeare and Marcus Aurelius so far in this podcast, so who says I'm not an intellectual? I really believe that we have to create contrast in our lives and accept the different elements and stages of our week, our month, and our year. Otherwise, it can all blend into one and be a bit samey. So his point was, if all year we're playing holidays, so if we were having holidays all year long, it would become tedious and as boring as just working all year. And I think most of us can recognize that deep down, that we need these different seasons, we need these different sprints, we need these different periods where different things are happening, and there's carrot and stick, and there's risk and reward, and there's focus and dedication, and then there's play and relaxation. I have done quite well this year, I think, with having periods where it has been graft, work, sales training, podcasting, fitness training, a little bit of golf. And then I've been able to, and this has been a bit different for me, have 2 holidays, one in July and one in September, that were just total party holidays. 3 days in Ibiza in July, 4 days in Ibiza in September. And I maybe posted a few stories about the podcast, I did a few LinkedIn posts, but did no other work when I was there. That is so new for me to do that. And I'm telling you, the energy I came back with, albeit not, maybe not immediately, but the excitement I came back with to start pushing on with work again was on a really, really high level. Equally, the holidays that I did for March and May in Dubai were working holidays where I logged on for my sales job most of the days. I did some podcasting. I think I had a couple of brunches when I was out there both times, a couple of beach club days. They were like a blend of work and play. And those are what I would look at as like extended year planner events where I'm making sure that there's the grind and the push and the dedication to work, and then there's the elation and the excitement of holiday that I feel like I've earned and I've worked towards. Otherwise, if I just worked all the time, that would be tedious. And if I just partied and holidayed all the time, I'd become very sick of that very quickly, just based on how I am. So that's on a longer time horizon. On a weekly basis, I feel like I have play built in as well, and relaxation and switching off. Something that I started to do a few years ago was on my daily to-do list, and then in my time box diary, I would book in things that were quote unquote fun and not necessarily productive. So yes, you might fill your to-do list with make X number of calls, send Y number of emails, do this presentation 3 till 4, go to the gym, albeit for me, the gym is a fun activity. I would write in other stuff like phone this friend, post this on Instagram, although again, some people might feel that's a chore. I started to book in things in my diary that I was excited about and were not necessarily like quote unquote contributing to like production or work. So ensuring that there's time built in throughout your day, throughout your week, throughout your year for both work and play will ensure that you don't end up in this kind of boring zone of monotony, and you have different levels of elevation at different times. I think if you're to chase too much, then you don't get the same appreciation. So I had a fantastic time in Dubai in the early part of the year, and then Ibiza in the second half. I'm very likely, touch wood, going to go back to Dubai November, December. And I'm really looking forward to those periods because they're earmarked on the calendar. I know what's coming, and there's an element of work and play to both of those. Okay, number 7, and I'll have a quick drink before we go into it. And it's a little bit of a formula for you. Time invested plus effort expended plus disciplined behaviors equals success eventually. This is a formula that I've put a lot of stock in for quite a long time now. And I think I read it out exactly word for word in the solo pod in November 2022 for my 30th birthday. And if I reflect on what I was doing in November 2022 and I see the behaviors I had and the effort that I put in alongside the 2-year time span as elapsed since recording that, there's some really tangible, successful results which have come off the back of that. Clear markers of success that I can point to in terms of metrics, both financially, in a well-being sense, in a social sense. And I can directly attribute a lot of those to the time invested, the 2 years, the effort that I put in terms of my ability to do them, and the disciplined behaviors that I chose to rely on as well. That's really exciting. And I'm glad from that perspective, I've got that kind of content creation angle. And there's the whole, if you want to know what you're going to be like in 2025, look at how you spent your time in 2024. And if that's not a stark reminder to make the most of the last few months that we've got of this year, then I don't know what is. And something that I'll add on the counter side to this to make sure that I give balance is there's also a chance to assess whether some of the disciplined behaviors were as valuable as others. And by that, I mean, which of the behaviors that I was doing during November 2022 when it came to being disciplined about, which of them led to more success, or which were present and didn't really have a major impact, or even which behaviors did I stick to and were disciplined about and give a lot of time and effort to, but they didn't maybe pull through the way that I hoped. And I think that's really helpful too, because if you use this formula and you just always do the same thing over and over and over again in the same time frames and the same intensity and the same types of behaviors within that same habits, then you'll always get what you've always got. Whereas if I consider in 2022, maybe since then I've maybe outsourced some of the things that I was being really disciplined on. So back then I probably would have been doing a lot of my own production on the podcast. So uploading to YouTube, that would have been done by me. Uploading to X and to LinkedIn would have been done by me. That's been outsourced now. So those were disciplined behaviors which were valuable, but I knew that I could outsource and I could then add more behaviors in that can be done only by me. And that can be really helpful too. Equally, if I reflect on those times, I continue to have a very strong walking habit and my steps. But I also know that it's quite easy for me to get into a pattern where I almost walk too much and I spend too much time trying to get my step count up, sorry. And that can help me to be really lean. And that is a form of success for me in some senses. But if I don't use that time when I'm walking well to maybe research a podcast guest or phone a friend or do my DMs, then that behavior is less effective than if I use that time to its absolute maximum. So the quality of my effort and the quality of my discipline, the quality of my behaviors plays a role within the success I'm aiming for as well. Equally, over time, success might change. So if a disciplined behavior, and this is a funny one, I'm going to give this to you because I was speaking about this with a friend the other day. He is of a similar age to me, and he is probably more on track, I'm going to say, if you can use that term right, to settle down. And one of his behaviors he's spending a lot of time on is dating. And if he was to apply the effort that he applies to dating to another pursuit in his life, whether that's maybe grow his business or if he was to do content creation, then the different success marker he's aiming for would look radically different. Now, hear me out. His measure of success at this point in time might be to find the right girl so that he can start a family. My aim for success is not typically in that area right now, albeit I'm absolutely open to find the right person and the right girl to date. But he's putting a lot of focus on that being the successful metric. So best believe the disciplined behaviors he has should be in alignment with that. Whereas if your goal and your element and view of success differs, then the behaviors that you input into that formula are going to differ. So reminder of that formula: time invested, which is vital; effort expended, which is just the intensity and how hard you go; and disciplined behaviors is just the habits that you choose to stick to and you continue to do. And that will equal success in the field that you're aiming for eventually. Okay, question number 8. I can't complain how much is on my plate when my goal was to eat. This is a quote from American presenter and comedian Steve Harvey. And I was talking about this, one of the patrons, one of my good friends, Stu McMillan of Plum Squad. We were asking each other how we're getting on, and we both said, "Oh, really busy." And I said to him, I'm going to be doing this solo podcast, and I'm going to be talking about this quote that I learned from Steve Harvey. I can't complain how much is on my plate when my goal was to eat. How true is that for so many of the people that listen to a podcast like this one, who are taking on more and more and more, and sometimes it feels like a lot, and sometimes it feels like too much. A lot of the challenges and constraints on our time are problems of abundance. They are problems that we wanted to have previously. We wanted to be able to take on the big contract, which caused us to work longer hours and to take on more staff. We wanted to have the family, to make sure that we had to be home for bedtime to tuck in our daughter and to have dinner with our wife. We wanted to have the stress and the strain of managing a new facility that we've just opened, because previously that was a pipe dream we always wanted to have. We wanted to have the pressure of doing a second podcast on a weekly basis because that was the frequency we said we were going to do in order to get the show to the level we wanted to get it to. These are all examples of things that we were wanting to have on our plate. And when it comes time to talk about it, we shouldn't moan, because our goal was to have a full plate that we could eat from. The things that I've been trying to take on, the things that you've been trying to take on, the things that you've been trying to do are all things that you wanted to load onto your plate. Now you have them on your plate and you have to deal with them. Congratulations. It's actually a good thing. Previously, maybe you didn't have enough going on inside your life, or maybe you had things going on inside your life that you didn't want to have going on. Of course, I've mentioned before about outsourcing, whether that's the cleaning of your house or the meal prep to your door. These are things, or the washing and the ironing. These are things that I like to outsource. But best believe, once that's off my plate, I'm going to load something else on there that I really care about. So I cannot complain about how much is on my plate at the moment, because so much of it is stuff that I've always wanted to have to or get to do. And I hope you feel the same. Number 9, inputs influence outputs. Inputs influence outputs. If you truly believe it, think about how you would change the things that you allow into your life. So think about the inputs that you bring in on a daily basis, what you watch, what you read, who you associate with, what you bring into your head and into your world. It will massively impact the quality of your work, the quality of your thoughts, and the quality of your life. Choose very carefully what you put in. One of the funny things that I said on the 30 Thoughts at 30 was, if you still listen to the radio when you're commuting, you're not going to make it, bro. And that was slightly tongue-in-cheek, but I do mean it, because when you're driving around or when you're commuting, what you choose to listen to in that time can either uplift you, educate you, inspire you, motivate you, or you can listen to some DJ phoning in, playing the same songs that they play 10 times a day, giving you a travel update, giving you a news update. I mean, I know what the quality of my thoughts are going to be like after a drive versus the quality of somebody's thoughts who just listens to mundane shite on the radio. It really is up to you to shape what you consume, what you bring in. You can filter your feed, follow the sources you want to. Something that I come up against quite a lot of the time. People are like, oh, I can't possibly unfollow that person from school because they'll get annoyed, and I know I haven't seen them in 8 years, but I don't want that aggro. Just meet them, meet the stories, meet their posts. You don't have to see it. You don't have to have an all-out war with them. They're not going to be annoyed that you haven't been viewing their story unless they're that kind of psychotically inclined. I really believe that there's the opportunity to filter what inputs we take in, and it will massively impact the quality of our outputs. Again, another solo conversation, I think it was a Q&A recently, I mentioned I've been watching or reading a lot less on X, because I think over the last little while with the political situation globally, and even in the UK with some of the riots and stuff like that, I just felt I came off the app angry. And it was influencing the quality of my output. It was influencing how I was thinking. It was influencing how I felt. So I'm trying not to consume that very often. In the same way, it's been probably the best part of a decade, or maybe just slightly less than that, maybe about 8-9 years since I watched much news at all. Because living at home, it was always on in the family house, but living in the flat, my brother, we don't even watch live TV. So I really believe that we can shape the quality of the inputs that go in, and that will have a tremendous impact on what comes out. Okay, number 10. And this is a piece of advice about what you see your creators and the people you look up to online doing. Look at what they did then, not what they say now. How many times, and this is a fitness example to start with, have you seen the likes of a Steve Cook or a Chris Bumstead or a insert fitness influencer from the female space that I don't know any names of? They've given you like their chest routine or their booty routine or their leg day or their full day of eating. What you're seeing is what keeps them where they are now or takes them to their existing goal now, not what they did to get to where they are. And many of us are considering, how do I get closer to where they are? So what is far more important than what they're up to now is what they did prior to that. What they did to move from A to J or H or I rather than what they're doing to go from H or J or I to further down the alphabet towards S and R and Z. I really think it's so important that when we see these people online who are, by all accounts, smashing it and doing fantastically well, take the advice they give about their current situation, or even what they maybe think through rose-tinted glasses about their prior situation, take it with a pinch of salt, or maybe even a lump, because they sometimes can't even remember what it was like to be in the position that you're in. So instead of looking at what they're up to now and taking their advice like absolutely wholemeal and wholesale, consider what they were up to when they were in a position more similar to yours and what got them to there. Because in the fitness space, if I look at some of the guys that are training nowadays and they're sharing their workouts, those are not the workouts that got them to where they are. I really laugh. A lot of the guys in the functional fitness space are in tremendous shape, doing high rocks, doing CrossFit, absolutely doing fantastically, putting themselves on the world stage and getting great results. But if they're like very muscular, very jacked, I'm going to tell you, you're not going to like this. It probably wasn't high rocks training that built that. It was bodybuilding style training, strength training, packing on slabs of muscle through hypertrophy, not through doing burpee broad jumps and wall balls. That did not build that set of quads. That set of quads helps them to perform, and the muscular endurance that comes with doing maybe high rep sets on the leg press years and years ago, or high rep sets of squats years and years ago. Think about what somebody did in the past, not what they do now. And that's sometimes why it can be helpful to follow creators who are slightly earlier in their journey, or dive into their older stuff. Or if they have a video where they reflect more deeply on times when they were in the past, that's going to be more valuable rather than necessarily what they're up to now. Point number 11. Use it all. Every emotion creates energy. I know many of you listen to this will have just listened to the episode with Dr. Julie Gurner, the second time that I've had the privilege of having her on the show. And Dr. Julie encouraged us to use every single emotion required, because every emotion creates energy. And that includes ones like anger, spite, distaste, fury, rage, frustration. Improperly channeled, and many of these emotions are ones that can spill over. They can lead to destructive paths like addiction, like destruction. These are things that we don't want to encounter. But if we use them as fuel for the fire, as energy for us to work harder, to push on, that's so, so important. Dr. Julie talked about having a professor ask her class what they hope to make in their careers in terms of a salary on an annual basis. And I think Dr. G said something that was like 5 or 6x what everyone else in the class said, and the professor kind of laughed. Best believe in those moments where it was hard during her career to maybe study that little bit extra for the next examination, for the next qualification, to maybe write the email to win the next client, or to get the reference from the former employer so that she could go for the next interview. Those moments, you definitely think about the times you were spited, the times you were put down, the times you were pushed down upon. And I really encourage you and people like you and I to use those moments. I remember, and this is such a petty example, but it just shows the power of human emotion. I remember 2014 time, I started training in a local gym. By that point, I built quite a decent physique. And I remember somebody saying to a friend of mine, "Oh, it's all good, he's got arms and abs, but he's got no legs." And I remember for the next 6 months to a year, I used to batter my legs thinking about, I'll fucking show him. I'm going to build decent legs. Oh, yeah. I mean, he says my arms are good. Yeah, I'll train them hard, but watch this. I'm going to train these legs twice a week like a demon. And in the sets where you were wanting to quit and you were wanting to re-rack the machine or to take the load off, I would do the extra reps because I knew that I wanted to use that fury, that emotion, that spite, that distaste that I'd been slighted against that person and for me. So I encourage you to use it all. Tap into it, lean into it. Whatever emotion it is that's going to fuel you, it's not going to be forever, but use it when you can, and it'll be a valuable fuel source to help you kick on. Number 12, if you knew it was going to work out, there would be no risk and everyone would be doing it. The reward that many of us are chasing lies on the other side of uncertainty. I like to have certainty in life. It's a big reason why I'm a big advocate of elective sobriety. I like to have certainty and control, and I like to manage my diary. I like to know that the efforts that I put in are going to lead towards something in my health and my fitness. It's why I like sales, because I know that a certain amount of effort with a certain amount of quality is going to lead to a certain result typically. But I also know that when you start something like a podcast, when you start doing sales consultancy training, when you launch my podcast masterclass, my video course for helping people start their own podcast, there is no certainty or any guarantee whatsoever there is going to be anything on the other side of any of these things. None. I know I can improve my chances through the quality of my efforts, through my frequency of my efforts, through refining those over time, through pushing that a little bit harder, through upskilling. But if anyone went into a venture and they knew it was going to work out and that there was no risk and it was always going to pay off, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be smashing it out of the ballpark. They'd be doing what their most excitable activity that they could possibly think of, and that was going to be their job because there was no risk. There wasn't any chance of it failing, them having to go back with their tail between their legs to the previous employer to start again because their side hustle that tried to become their main hustle didn't take off. The reward that we're all wanting and chasing must come with an element of risk, and that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in the last few months. If I want to put myself more out there with my sales training and my sales coaching and work with more organizations, but also with more individuals, there's going to be a risk that I spend money on filming and creating content for it for a video course and the uptake isn't as high. There's going to be situations where I reach out to many businesses and the risk is that they don't see the value of the rate that I want to charge and the curriculum and the coursework and the different items on the agenda that I think will be valuable to their staff. They won't see that, and the risk will be that I get rejected. The risk will be that I don't make as much money as I thought I would. The risk will be that I lose money in particular investments. These are massive things, and I said investments there. If there was no risk in the S&P 500 or in the cryptocurrency market or in the stocks and shares ISA that you've got, then everyone would probably be doing it because it would feel like a sure thing. So recognize that on the other side of a lot of the goals that you have, there's going to be some risk that's going to need to take place for you to get that reward. And that's a message for me as much as it is for you. Number 13, you shouldn't love everything you do, but everything you do should enable you to do the things you love. I don't think that everyone can work in their area of passion or love, or not every job or business can be something that everyone absolutely jumps out of bed and loves. However, many people can have a career or a business which enables their lifestyle for themselves and the people they care about to be fantastic, either from a monetary perspective, a safety and security perspective, a fulfillment perspective. I'll give you an example. I am selling furniture for the last 3 years. Do I love getting into detail about the type of fabric or the type of spring mechanism or the type of finish on the mattress or its eco credentials or how it's been recycled or how it's been made? Absolutely not. But what I do love is when I understand that and I can communicate it to customers in the right way, is I can win the deal. I can increase the revenue I bring into the company. I can increase the commission that I earn. I can increase my role within the business, and I can make something happen which wasn't able to happen without my input and without my energy and my skills. Do I love every single part of that job? Absolutely not. But do I love what it enables me to do and the things it enables me to enjoy off the back of that? Absolutely. Do I love every element of the podcast? No. I do not love going back and forth with the guest to arrange a date. I do not love downloading this from StreamYard and taking it into GarageBand and then uploading it to Anchor. I do not love when I uploaded the Dan Meredith episode a couple of episodes ago and the intro was half as quiet as the rest of the episode. That was not good. I felt like a bit of a fool and a bit disappointed that I put it out there, and I'm very sorry for that. You cannot love every single part of the process, but the things that you do as part of the process should enable you to get to things that you love. I also think that, for example, I was talking about businesses that maybe enable a particular lifestyle. There might be somebody who works in a career and it's a little bit mundane, a little bit sameish, but they get fantastic holidays and they're really well paid and they can go away with their family and do things that they love. And what they spend 40 hours a week on doesn't hurt them, but it doesn't inspire them and excite them but what they spend the rest of their week and the rest of their hours. So let's say they work from 9 till 5 and they've got those 8 hours. The other 8 hours that they're awake, because they're sleeping 8, they have a fantastic time. They love it. They train in a gym, that they get to see their friends, they get to have dinner with their spouse and their kids, and they earn enough money to send their kids to the school they want to send them to and let them do the hobbies they want to do. You shouldn't love everything you do, but everything you do should play a role in enabling you to do the things you love. Number 14, the healthiest expression of materialism is where you spend money on things that improve your health, give you time, create freedom, and or make you wealthier. Those are 4 things that I think are incredibly important. And having an element of materialism is not something that should be shunned. I know, for example, that there's been some purchases I made in the last few years, which I've been really proud of. And they have either made me feel wealthier, they've created more freedom for me, they've given me more time, or they've improved my health. They tick those boxes. There's probably things that I've spent money on that haven't done those things, but they maybe been an exciting experience and they've been something that I've always wanted to do, but they weren't necessarily the healthiest expression of materialism. I think if you want to feel healthy about your materialism and your desires that you have, then consider if they can do one of those 4 things or multiple of those 4 things. And I really think that's the case. So, for example, when I ticked off a particular watch that I wanted to buy a couple of years ago or about 18 months ago, I know that it probably made me feel wealthier because it felt like an investment and it felt like a status symbol and it felt like I was in a good place. But it definitely wasn't the healthiest form of materialism compared to, for example, if I was to materialistically be, right, I'm going to buy a year's worth of cleaning for the flat and I don't care how much it costs because it's going to give me more time back. It's going to create more freedom for me. That's a more healthy expression of materialism than it is to buy a potential item. I think it can be really harsh on yourself if you batter yourself for all your materialism. But I think in general, if you're going to, as a percentage, look at how materialistic you are and how often you are, try and ensure that it ticks one of those 4 boxes: bettering your health, giving you more time back, giving you more freedom that you can enjoy, or making you wealthier in terms of an investment. Number 15, make social media social. Most of my closest friends have been made online and they tend to be more like-minded. That links very much to that whole connection discussion that we had at the start. If you use social media as it was intended, as a social network, you will get the opportunity to meet people who are interested in things like you, because you can filter for that, who care about things that you care about, who share similar values, similar interests, and who you can spend time with either online or, much better than that, in person, and connect with on a deeper basis and have them there for you and you be there for them. The way to do this, in my opinion and in my experience, has been to show up online as the person that you are just now and who you want to become. Of course, you can future pace that and try and show up as somebody that you're working towards, and try and find other people that are at a similar stage of their journey to you. Is the person that, like, say for example, you want to get really into your running. You might see the guys that are going to the run club or guys that are running their 5Ks in record times, and you're thinking, oh, I want to get a piece of that. Those guys might not be interested in spending as much time with you until you've maybe done a little bit more of that. So you might be better placed finding somebody who's at a similar stage of the journey, who's maybe just getting into the running or just getting started to try and improve their times. And I think there's going to be a lot of this in the future where, as we live in this world where we've got more connection, but we're less connected than ever before, we need to use the tools that are available to us to reach out to people that hold similar values, care about the same things as we do, spend their time in the same things as we do, and get the chance to connect off the back of it. I know that I trained with so many people back in like 2017, 2018, 2019 when CamBros was the thing on Instagram. Back then I was creating my content, and many of those people I'm still friends with to this day. Many of those people were some of the early guests in the podcast in 2020 that helped me launch the thing and get started. And as a percentage, there's probably another 50% of people that I trained with during that time that I'm still civil with and still would say hello to and whatnot, but they're not my friends. And that's because when we met up, we had maybe one shared interest, the gym. Whereas when I met up with some other friends like the likes of David Hatt and Bryce Bell, we talked about politics and business and mindset and health and wealth. There was more to it than just turning up to train together. And I think that's an important realization, that you will also meet up with people, much like you would if you were using it as a dating app and you made social media social. You're going to meet up with people that you're going to be cool with, but they're not going to be close friends. But then you're going to meet up with some people and they're going to really become a huge, huge part of your life. Number 16, today is the youngest you will ever be again. Get on with it. Past turning 30, this point presses home a little bit harder than it used to, and maybe you feel the same depending what age you are listening to this. I had 3 pretty notable celebratory events with friends and family when I turned 30. So I had 2 big dinners with 2 groups of friends and 1 dinner with my family. For 32, 2 years down the line, I had a nice family meal, but there was nothing else booked in, as I just didn't really feel it merited it. And I certainly do feel a little bit older, and I've actually, funnily enough, spent time socially with a lot of younger friends this year, whether it's been some of the holidays or just some of the stuff we've done socially on weekends in terms of golf and going out a little bit. At times, it feels like they're in a slightly different season of their life, and I do feel like a little bit like the wise old head among them, and I'm kind of just comfortable in that role. But it's important to remember that today, right now, is the youngest I will ever be ever again, because it's only going to get older from here on out. And there's a phrase that I'm gonna share with you, because I'm not going to let myself feel old and past it. And this idea from James Clear helps to center me and helps me and anyone that's worried about getting old. Most people do not consider 65 to be a young age, but when you're 75, you'd love to rewind to 65 and regain those 10 years. Few people would describe 35 as their youth, but in your mid 50s, your mid 30s feel like the young you. Today is a great opportunity, no matter your age. Looking back in a few years, today will seem like the time that you were young, full of potential, or the moment when you could have started earlier, or the turning point when you make a choice that benefited your future. The moment in front of you right now is a good one. Make the most of it. There's not an awful lot more I want to add to that point, but I will say, time is going to pass. Do not waste it wishing that you'd started previously or taken action sooner, or that you were younger and that you had more time again. Now is the best possible time apart from yesterday. So let's use it. This is the time of our lives and the moment is now. Number 17, take gratitude daily for the small things you appreciate. I gratitude journal from May 2020 until June 2024. And this summer, I completely fell off. Now, that is very unlike me in any habit that I have, but I just didn't take it with me to Dubai at the end of May, and it never started back to the same extent. But I recently started back, and a funny thing happened. Last weekend, before my birthday, my mum gave me a little sticker the other day, and it said on it, "What made you smile today?" And you were to write it. And she's been doing that before going to bed each night. And that is the simplest form of gratitude that allows you to reflect on a day well spent, especially on the days that maybe feel all the same. And on days when I maybe work from home, I'll get up in the morning, go for my walk, I'll listen to my podcast, I'll log on for the laptop and I'll do my sales calls and I'll do my pitches and I'll do my emails. And then I'll maybe train at lunch and then I'll come back and then I'll work again and then I'll do some podcast stuff. And then you sit in bed at night and you're like, that's kind of the same thing that I did on Monday and Tuesday, and today's Wednesday. Importantly, when you have some sort of process to take gratitude and stock of the things that you did during your day that felt good, and those are often very small things, that is a fantastic way to end the day. And I start my day that way as well. And I use the 6-minute diary to do that. But even if you just had a post-it note that said, "What made you smile today?" you would be very surprised at what small things you choose to write down on that post-it note, and what small things that you do daily that you really care about. And there's a method to gratitude journaling called like the sledgehammer, basically, or I might be butchering it, but that's what I've come to know it as, where you're basically just endlessly banging into your brain and into your thought ways and pathways that these are the things that really matter. These are the things that I care about. I know it's small, but it means a lot to me. So for me, sometimes it will be, I appreciate that my mum printed my podcast notes off from my interview that I'm going to do with X, Y, or Z. I appreciate the warm meal that I had after a long day at the gym that I just put in the microwave and heated up. I appreciate the flexibility in my day to train at lunch with my friend alongside all the different things that I get to do. You would be so surprised at how small the things that you write down and think about are. And these things are very attainable for us. And we actually live a very good life, even when we maybe don't feel like it's in full flow or it's absolute optimal. Okay, number 18. Had to get political, didn't I? The less state and government input into my life, the better. Some listeners will think that I've only maybe recently started sharing some of my political stances on pro freedom and personal responsibility and the pretty disgraceful way that both the previous Conservative administration and certainly this Labour government are managing our country. But I used this phrase 2 years ago in my solo 30, but I want to bring it up again. Government is overgrown, it's bloated, and it's in excess, and it's reaching into areas and domains of our lives that I don't want it to influence, and it's encroaching more and more. And this is not going to slow down with the current political parties and options in the UK, and to some extent the US as well. I will say that Donald Trump's Republican Party, in theory, should be a party of smaller state and more personal liberty, but I don't know if that's guaranteed if he was to win. The state is growing in terms of its cost base, and it's also growing in terms of its demand on its private citizens to fund that. And it's also making decisions and getting involved in areas of life I don't think it has any right to. I am very much a small statist person anyway, and I would want it to do less than it was already doing even before it started to expand to the extent it has. But it's gotten out of control, and I think push will need to come to shove at some point where people continue to say, I cannot believe we're paying more tax because you are spending the money you're getting so badly and in a way that I don't agree with. And they only want to bring in more of it as well. We saw recently there's been an announcement, and this might be out of date by the time we record this, but we're talking about moving capital gains tax to 40%, 40. That is criminally stupid. And the height of stupidity in terms of socialism is just to absolutely destroy innovation and destroy business. But what I will say is, as a reflection at the age of 32, I want the state to take even less to do in my life. I want it to have less money from me. I want it to have less money from all of us. And I want us to have more autonomy on what we can spend our money on and how we fund ourselves and our lifestyles and those that we support in our close-knit community who are our family members, not every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the country. Question 19, again, slightly political, so bear with me. Society is going to become more unequal than ever before. Inequality is already growing, but it's about to get worse. I actually believe, as a political stance, in inequality of outcome. It's part of life and it's part of a functioning system by its nature that will have a disparity of results. Not everyone should have the same house, the same car, the same money, the same family, the same health outcomes. That's not how it works. There should always be an element and a discrepancy between what happens. I don't accept that the state should dictate that everyone gets the same. That's communist nonsense. However, I understand that they should create a safety net for those who absolutely need it and those who fall into depravity and they aren't in a state to look after themselves. But that is the bare minimum to help those at rock bottom. What is coming down the line, however, is increasing attempts from our political class to attempt to level the playing field in all areas and, if anything, to handicap the most productive and valuable and supportive already members of society. However, interestingly, these attempts are getting worse outcomes than ever before, and the gap is getting bigger, and the poorest in our society are getting worse outcomes than ever before, and the very elite richest are getting better outcomes, and it's those mostly in the middle who are getting hammered all the way down to those that are struggling the most. Interestingly, though, people with agency over their health, their wealth, their mind and body are stepping clear of the majority of the society who are in decline. I think there's a large proportion of the middle of society that are slipping down towards the bottom. And there's the normal people who are tuned into things like their health, their wealth, their mind, their body to escape from this. Because the average person has never been sicker. They've never been more overweight. They've never been more depressed. They've never been more reliant on financial support and aid. And they've never been more fragile mentally. Those who listen to podcasts like this one are already opting out and are choosing to address those areas of their life. Even if some of those areas that I've listed, they're maybe not in the perfect place right now. Maybe you're carrying a little bit more weight than you want to. Maybe you've not quite got your career in the place that you want to. Maybe mentally you've had some challenges in the last little while where you felt a little bit more down, a little bit more anxious. But by listening to good quality content and by consuming great sources and surrounding yourself with the right people, you're already voting with your intentions and your attention that you're spending to listen to these things and read these things to address these areas. I look around cities and town centres in horror at the moment. I don't recognise what the general population is becoming. But then I look at the time and the type of people I'm spending my time with and the type of people I speak to online and in person, and I'm encouraged, I'm inspired, and I'm reassured. That's because there's becoming a delta between what the average person is doing and what the people who are choosing to take control of their lives are going to do, and that is only getting bigger. So, if you're in that group of people, which I believe you are, choose to conduct yourself in a way that makes you unequal. You're going to get unequal outcomes to the rest of society. You're going to refine your circle. You're going to work on your brain. You're going to work on your body. You're going to work on your business and your career. And you're going to improve off the back of that. The gap's going to widen, and we just need to make sure that we and those that we care about are on the right side of that gap and that equation. Question number 20, and we're in the home straight. You teach people how to treat you. I used to hope and feel that people would treat me in the way that I wanted to. And I had a tough time in my late primary school, early secondary school with how I was treated by people. And I just always thought like, oh, they just don't care what I have to say. They don't care about how they make me feel. And that was probably true to an extent. But I wasn't a strong enough person at that point in time to explain verbally and potentially physically that you teach people how to treat you. I will treat people the right way, and I expect them to treat me that way back. If that's not reciprocated, then you immediately flag it. Another Dr. Julie phrase, but this time from the first episode we did together, 206. Fight up front. Now, that's not necessarily physical, but if you have something that somebody crosses a barrier with you or a boundary with you early on, verbalize it. Make it known immediately. I often bring up this example. There's a couple of dating coaches I had in the podcast in a couple of years ago, Dr. Taylor Burrows, and probably even more famous than her is Kezia Noble. We spoke about if you're getting into a relationship with somebody and maybe their social media content or conduct makes you a little bit uncomfortable. Maybe the guy that you started dating is liking a lot of scantily clad girls' photos, or you see him liking their stories. If that makes you uncomfortable, you need to say that immediately at the start. Have it as a red line. Have it as a barrier. If it gets crossed at that stage, choose to walk away. You teach people how to treat you. What you tolerate is what will happen. And this is a phrase that falls off the back of that. If you avoid difficult conversations, you will have difficult relationships. Listen to that again. If you avoid having that challenging conversation and getting up in the moment and explaining what you dislike and what you expect and what your values are and how you would like to be spoken to and how you would like to be treated, you will have relationships which do none of those things. And if anything, they think that because they've got away with it in the early stages, that's how it will continue. So for me, you teach people how to treat you and you set those barriers and those boundaries early on. Number 21, maintenance is easier than growth. When I was speaking about use it or lose it, what I think is a very important piece to know is that in order to, for example, to grow muscle or to get better at a skill or to get better at something that you care about, you probably have to spend more time improving and growing than you do once you get to a level and you want to stay where you are. Because often we consider that once we've achieved something, we have to keep putting in that same amount of effort to stay where we are. Now, that's true in some instances, of course it is. But I know, for example, when it comes to gaining muscle, the number of sets and reps and intensity that's required to hold on to muscle is far less than it requires to grow it. The amount of energy and focus and push that is required to grow a sales pipeline is a lot less than it's required to maintain the contacts and the accounts that I already manage and look after. I probably have to make a lot less calls to somebody who's already bought from me to talk about quoting for something else than I have to get somebody brand new to quote and speak to me for the first time because they've never heard of me. I need to grow. I need to get in there. Whereas maintaining a relationship is a little bit calmer. It's a little bit more easy to maintain. This is a really important point to note because when you are at a particular level, if you want to keep something where it is, you can refuse to go backwards even when you're not going forwards. Just because you're not growing in an area area does not mean you have to decline. Decline is optional. Give yourself the chance to maintain things. If it means you're turning your attention to other things in life, and Oliver Burkeman talked about in our episode on time management and kind of productivity, that choose what you're going to suck at is a really, really valuable tool. But you don't necessarily have to suck at something and mean it has to go backwards. You could suck at something and it just stay roughly where it is. You're not going to spend as much time and energy on your golf or your football this year. Okay. Well, that's because I'm focusing on X, Y, and Z, but I'm actually going to do golf once a month, and it means that I'm still relatively okay at it, but I'm not going to get any better. I'm not going to get my handicap down, but I might stay where it is. These are all things that we can consider, and I think the gym's an easy example for that. I know that if I want to maintain the muscle mass on my chest and my arms, I probably only need to train it half as much as if I'm trying to grow those muscles. Okay, number 22, second last one. We're just over an hour now, so we'll wrap up soon. True confidence comes from committing. We'll try again. A drink of water and we'll try again. True confidence comes from keeping commitments made to yourself. I cannot think of a better way to convince yourself of the value and the type of person that you are than doing the things that you said you were going to do when you said you were going to do them. It's as simple as that. If I tell myself, as I have done, I'm going to record this podcast tonight before I go to London at 6 a.m. tomorrow, and it's going to come out then guess what? I get the camera set up, I get the lights set up, I got the mic set up, I've got my notes in front of me with my 23 points, and I'm going to talk, I'm going to record it, I'm going to produce it, and it's going to go out. If I say I'm the type of person to start running twice a week, which I have done, best believe it's going in my diary on a Tuesday night, and then I have a day on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday when I'm a bit more flexible. And it makes me confident that I am somebody that does as he said he was going to do. If I put in my diary that I've got sales training tomorrow afternoon with four individuals, I've got the slides ready. But when I show up to that, I have to be somebody that's been delivering good quality sales results in my life and my day job to feel like I'm not a fraud and somebody that is showing up and telling them to do things that you've never done. I'm keeping those commitments to myself that I am who I said I am, and that gives me a lot of confidence to show up and be that guy, to be consistent. When I did coaching for people starting their podcast, before I had the evergreen resource of the podcast masterclass as a video library, I had to show up and be somebody that built a top 1% global podcast. I had to do the weekly episodes. I had to be somebody that got compliments from guests on how well researched I was and how fluent my articulation was, albeit at this time of night I've been struggling a little bit. I'm not as clear as I normally are, sorry. But I had to do the things that made me feel confident in my abilities by continually doing them over and over and over again and proving it to myself. And that is the true definition of confidence. Number 23, and I think it would be remiss of me not to address this based on where my life has gone over the last couple of years in terms of financial income and the levels that I've been pushing to grow to. And a lot of this links into the private victories that I've had that have maybe now been seen to be public in terms of stuff that people have seen me achieve and be awarded and be given and maybe purchased myself. Number 23, your wealth thermostat and expectations adjust based on your environment. As I've started to scale my personal income over the last 2 years in particular, I have kept relatively calm because I have been very fortunate to be exposed to people in person and through the podcast that have done financially staggering things. And interestingly, that kept me calm, and it meant my wealth thermostat and my expectation of my own earning power and what I was capable of was far, far higher than I'd ever done before. Why? Because I was surrounded by these people, I was learning from these people, I was communicating with these people, and I was comparing my own skills and my own abilities with them. I was comparing my work ethic with them. I was comparing my disciplined behaviors and my effort with them. And I was thinking that I think I can attain that level of success or a percentage of or a type of it and not feel like a fraud, not feel like I didn't deserve it. In fact, I feel like I can work towards this, and my wealth thermostat and my expectation level for myself is of a particular level now. It didn't faze me to start to earn six figures because I've been around people who were doing that monthly, or at least they were doing it like every couple of quarters. And I was thinking, right, okay, wow, that's serious money. How are they doing that? What are their behaviors? How is their business structured? What do they bring in on a regular basis? What do I do that's similar to that? What value can I generate for the business that I work for, and with the podcast and the consultancy stuff that would allow me to do that as well? And my wealth thermostat and my expectations for myself rose dramatically by who I was surrounded by. If I think about when I started my graduate job at 2021, I think I was on 22K. I looked at some of the managers and the senior people within the company, and I think some of them were like 50, 55K. And I remember thinking, oh my God, that is so much money. And to some people listening to this, that will be a lot of money based on where you're at in your journey and what you're working towards and what you're aiming for. But as I grew up the corporate ladder and I got exposed to other stuff online, and I spoke to entrepreneurs and I spoke to really successful sales guys, and I spoke to people that worked in recruitment that were doing big sums that became friends with, I was like, okay, I can definitely earn six figures, and I know how to, and I'm worthy of it, and I'm capable of it, and I'm going to do it. And when that came to fruition over the last couple of years, probably 2.5 years ago now it started, I felt completely comfortable that I was able to step up to the plate. So I guess my thoughts and reflections on that would be to surround yourself with people who you believe you can achieve the same as, or achieve a level of success that is in the same ballpark as. And if you can match your energy, your frequency, your efforts and your behaviors in line with those, then you can perhaps achieve a similar level of success and feel comfortable or deserving of that as well. But that is a wrap for my 23 thoughts at the age of 32. I mentioned in the intro to this, if you've been listening on audio, that the Dr. Julie Gurner podcast on Sunday went absolutely crazy, and I'm very grateful and thankful of your support. If you're new here or you're a long-time listener, it's been helping push it out. Thank you so much. It's been an amazing last 12 months, and I promise that 32-year-old Colin is going to bring as much value to you as 31-year-old Colin attempted to do as well. So appreciate you all, and I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.